It was the practice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that after Fajr Salah, he would sit down with the Sahaba and he would ask them, okay, have you seen a dream? Now if the Sahaba had seen something significant, they would relate. And if they hadn't, they would say, no, Ya Rasulullah. So according to this practice, he asked, has anyone seen a dream? The Sahaba said no. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam began to relate his dream. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, okay, last night, the angels came, held me by the hand, and they took me to the blessed land, Quds. He says, on the way I came across some people, two men. One was standing, one was sitting down. The one that was standing, he had a hooked rod. Metal hooked rod. And what he would do was, he would rip open the mouth of this person that is sitting down. He would come to one side, let's say the right hand side, and he would begin ripping his mouth. And now this guy is crying, wailing, shedding tears of blood. But this guy continues. He becomes blind and deaf to his crying. He keeps on ripping his mouth till he reaches the nape. When he gets to this, now he comes to the other side. He begins to rip the other side. As he's ripping the other side, he will find that the right hand side is become better just like it was before. He will rip the left hand side. When he reaches the nape, he will go now to the other side. When he goes to the other side, he will find that the other side has become better, just like as it was. And this process is continuing. From one side to the other, the guy does not even get a second to breathe. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, what's this? The angel said, continue. They continued. This time Rasulullah comes to another two people. One is standing and one is lying down. The one is standing has got a great this rock stone, huge stone, and he is crushing the head of this person that is lying in front of him. He crushes his head is crushed. The stone rolls a distance. This man goes to get the stone. In his absence, he finds that the head is exactly as it was, and this process is continuing. Again, Rasulullah asks, what's this? They say, continue. This time they come to an oven-like thing. The top part is narrow, the bottom part is wide. Rasulullah can hear people screaming inside. He takes a look inside, and he saw naked men and women. There are flames of fire leaping beneath them. And every time these flames of fire leap, these people rise as if they are coming out of the tanur, out of the oven. When the flames become weak, they return. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw these people in this position. Again asked, okay, who are these people? He says, continue. This time they come to a river of blood. A person is inside the river. There's a person on the bank of the river. This one on the bank has stones. This one in the river is trying to swim to get to the bank. When he gets close to the bank, this one on the bank takes stone, pelts him, and he ends up where he is. And this process is continued. Now it's a long hadith. Just to conclude, at the end, the angels inform Rasulullah with regards to these individuals and why they were being punished. The first person whose mouth was being ripped, the angel said, this one, kadhab yuhaddith bil kidhb. This was a compulsive liar. You know, in this day and age, it's fashion to lie. Everyone comes out with Jack and Norris and feels good about it. So this guy used to entertain people, I guess, and come out with a load of rubbish. This is the price that he was paying. The second guy, whose head was being ripped, was one who Allah gave the knowledge of Quran. He was able to read the Quran, but he never read it and never acted upon it. So as a result, his head was being crushed. The third guy, the naked men and women, were those that would fornicate and commit zina. This is the punishment that they were receiving. The one that was inside the river of blood was the one that would wheel and deal in interest. Now this hadith, my young friends, is in the Sahih of al-Bukhari, the most authentic book of hadith. And the muhaddithin write with regards to this hadith, under this they write, these different punishments that Rasulullah saw, they were the punishments of the barzakh, they were the torments of the grave. So from this hadith you conclude that different people will receive different punishments depending on the sin that they've committed. And you know what? Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually reveals this. He actually reveals this. Many a time to the pious, many a time in dreams. And you know what? Now and then Allah actually reveals this in reality to people like you and me. And the objective is, you know what? Abibi baaz aaja. Abibi baaz aaja. My friend, you have, even now you have time. Refrain from sin. Come to Allah and His Rasul. Adopt the teachings. You still have time. This is why Allah gives us the reminders. Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Qusr relates that in Istanbul, there was a governor, he died. They dug a grave for him. When they were on the verge of lowering this body inside the grave, do you know what they saw inside the grave? They saw a black snake waiting for him inside the grave. They were terrified. Naturally, they were terrified. They didn't want to bury this guy inside this grave, so they dug another grave. Now they've spent hours digging the second grave. They're on the verge of lowering the body inside the grave, and you know what? The same snake they saw in the first is waiting in the second. They dig a third grave, and they find when they're on the verge of lowering this grave, all of a sudden, out of the blue, they find the same black snake inside the grave. I ask you, my young friends, on that particular occasion, that narration, what do you think it suggests? How many graves do you think they dug on that day? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 graves. The narration says that on that day, they dug about 30 graves. Every time the grave was dug and they were on the verge of lowering this body inside the grave, they would find the same black snake waiting. Where are you going to hide? It doesn't come any clearer than this. Where are you going to hide? Where? Allah. Even when you've gone 6 foot under, you can't get away. You've left the dunya and you've gone 6 foot under and you think you've got away with it. This is where it will begin. Fed up after digging so many graves, they consulted the ulama. What should we do with this person? May Allah protect us. They said, you know what? Just bury him inside the grave. Leave the rest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they buried him. In the Tariq of Maqrezi in the year 600, a man buried his wife. And by mistake, his handkerchief, which had money inside it, fell inside the grave. Now he's gone home, realizing that the handkerchief is inside the grave. He takes one of the local scholars to dig up the grave. Now the scholar standing at the corner of the grave, and this guy is dug up the grave. What did he see on that day? He saw his wife is sitting inside the grave and her hair are tied to her feet. So what he does is interfere in the akhirah. And he tries to untie the hair. Trying, he's unable to do so. How is he going to be able to make a difference to the akhirah? But he doesn't refrain. He continues to do so. And what does the scholar witness? Down he goes, and down his wife goes, and there is not a sign of them. And he remains unconscious for 1 day and 1 night. When he gains consciousness and relates it to the Khalif, the Amir, he in turn wrote to the great scholar of Islam who alive was at the time, the great master of Hadith, Muhaddis, Taqiyuddin ibn Daqiq al-Eid, this is what's been witnessed in our land. So the great master of Hadith wrote back that this is a reminder. Simple. This is a reminder for people like you and me. Abhi time hai. Even now you've got time. Even now you can set the record. Just turn to Allah. Allah will embrace. It doesn't have to be like this. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala now and then reveals this. Huwayrith ibn Rabab was at the time of Umar. He was passing through a place called Athaba. And all of a sudden out of a grave he saw a man come out. His head was on fire and his face was on fire. And he was tied in chains. And he was begging for water. Iskini, iskini. He says all of a sudden another guy came out from the grave following him, saying, don't give the kafir anything, don't give the kafir anything. He grabbed him by his chains and dragged him back inside the grave again. Now obviously Huwayrith ibn Rabah was terrified, and so was the she-camel. He says, I lost total control till I got to a place called Irku Zabia. That's where I read my Maghrib and Isha, and I head straight away to Medina al-Munawwara, to the great Umar Farooq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and I related to him this incident which I witnessed. It says Umar Farooq looked into this, and it turned out that this man died in the days of ignorance. He belonged to the tribe of Banu Ghifar, and the sin that he would commit was he did not fulfill the rights of his guests. Abdullah bin Umar also witnessed a similar incident at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when he related to the Messenger of Allah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that was the enemy of Allah, Abu Jahl, and Allah is punishing him in this manner right till the day of judgment.